Lord Hadrian Voss watched from beneath the dripping portico of the Charing Cross Lending Library as the woman he had last seen 15 years ago knelt on the rain-soaked pavement. She was mending a stranger's coat. The stranger was him. He had not planned this. He had stepped out into the October downpour to avoid a conversation inside, and the seam of his left sleeve had caught on the iron gate. The linen had torn cleanly, exposing the silk lining beneath. Before he could react, she was there. Needle already threaded, fingers already moving. She did not look at his face. She did not speak. The rain struck the cobblestones around them like small, insistent questions, and she answered none of them. She simply worked the needle through the wet wool with the efficiency of someone who had mended worse things than coats. Hadrian stood very still. The rain ran down his collar and pooled against skin that had not registered temperature in 300 years. Yet where her knuckle brushed his wrist, he felt something. Not heat exactly. Proximity. The memory of what warmth had been. She finished. She bit the thread with her teeth, stood, and walked away without a single word. The lending library door swallowed her. Hadrian stared at the mended seam. The stitches were small, precise, and furious, as if the thread itself were angry. He knew that anger. He had caused it. Her name was Cressida Ashwell. She was 37, a widow who owned a modest but profitable bookbinding workshop near Lamb's Conduit Street. 15 years ago, she had been 22, apprenticed to her late husband, and Hadrian had been a patron of the shop. They had spoken 4 times. On the 4th occasion, he had held her hand over a torn end paper and felt the precise moment his dead heart attempted to remember its function. He had vanished that same night without explanation. He had moved to Vienna. He had told himself it was wisdom. Now she was inside a lending library in London, and he was standing in the rain holding a mended sleeve like a man who had forgotten how doors worked. "Voss!" The voice came from behind him. Sharp, unwelcome. "Standing in the rain like a vagrant. How perfectly you embody your decline." Hadrian turned. Mr. Edmund Bracknell stood beneath an enormous black umbrella, his smile precisely calibrated to convey superiority. Bracknell was a solicitor, a social climber, and a man who had spent 3 years attempting to purchase Cressida Ashwell's workshop for a client who wanted the land. "I was admiring the architecture," Hadrian said. "You were watching Mrs. Ashwell," Bracknell said. "As you did once before, I'm told. Before you disappeared and left her to manage her husband's debts alone." The accusation landed. Hadrian said nothing. "I mention it only because she has 3 weeks to vacate," Bracknell continued. "The lease expires. My client, Sir Godfrey Palmer, holds the freehold. The matter is already settled. I wouldn't want you to waste your famous fortune on a lost cause." Bracknell tipped his umbrella and walked away into the gray afternoon. Hadrian watched him go. Then he looked at the mended sleeve again. The stitches held against the rain. Inside the lending library, the air smelled of damp paper and floor polish. Hadrian found Cressida in the second row, pulling a volume on contract law from a high shelf. She was tall enough to reach it without the step stool. Her dark hair was pinned in a style that suggested she had done it without a mirror. "Mrs. Ashwell," he said. She turned. Her eyes registered recognition, then something harder than recognition. "Lord Voss," she said. She shelved the book she was holding and selected a different one. "You're wet. You mended my coat." "I mend things. It's what I do. Don't assign it meaning." "I wouldn't dream of it." She opened the contract law book and began reading as if he were furniture. Hadrian remained. He counted to 7 in his head, which was the number of seconds it had taken her to mend the seam. "You vanished 15 years ago," she said, not looking up. "No letter, no word through mutual acquaintances, no forwarding address. I assumed you had died. Then I heard you were in Vienna purchasing first editions, so I assumed something worse." "Worse than death?" he said. "Cowardice," she said. She turned a page. "What do you want, Lord Voss?" "Bracknell tells me you're losing your workshop." Her teeth found her tongue. Bracknell tells everyone everything. It's his only talent. Is it true? The lease expires in 3 weeks. Sir Godfrey Palmer wants the land for a hotel. I have 7 bindery workers who will lose their positions. I have 3 weeks of commissions to fulfill, and I have a copy of a lease extension signed by Palmer's father that Bracknell claims is legally void. She closed the book. That's why I'm reading contract law, not because I enjoy it. I could help, Hadrian said. She looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes were the color of strong tea, and they held 15 years of conclusions about him, none of them generous. The last time you helped, she said, you held my hand over a torn end paper and then fled to another country. I don't need that kind of help, Lord Voss. I need a solicitor who isn't Edmund Bracknell. Good afternoon. She walked past him. The scent of linseed oil and old leather followed her. It was the smell of her workshop, carried in the weave of her clothes. Hadrian stood among the shelves and let the silence settle. The lending library clerk stared at him. Hadrian bought a subscription he would never use and left. 2 days later, Cressida arrived at her workshop on Lamb's Conduit Street to find a notice nailed to the door. The notice declared the premises subject to a new lien filed by Sir Godfrey Palmer's estate office. The lien claimed unpaid ground rent dating back 4 years. 4 years, she said to her forewoman, Dorothea Marsh, who was already prying the notice off with a butter knife. I have receipts for every quarter. Bracknell doesn't care about receipts, Dorothea said. Bracknell cares about leverage. Cressida counted the iron nails in the door. 6. More than necessary for a single notice. Someone had wanted to make a point. She took the notice inside and spread it on her binding table. The paper was cheap. The ink was official. The signature at the bottom belonged to a magistrate she had never met. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was simple. Pay 4 years of allegedly owed ground rent within 14 days, or forfeit the premises to the freeholder. The amount? Dorothea asked. £240, Cressida said. Dorothea set down the butter knife. That was more than the workshop earned in a year. Cressida went to her filing cabinet. She pulled every receipt, every cancelled check, every letter of acknowledgement. She arranged them on the table in chronological order. The paper trail was complete. She had paid every quarter, on time, for 12 years. So we contest it, Dorothea said. With what solicitor? Cressida said. Every firm in this district does business with Palmer. The only one who would take my case is Bracknell, and Bracknell is the one filing the lien. A knock came at the workshop door. Not a polite knock, a landlord's knock. Cressida opened it. Edmund Bracknell stood there, dry under his enormous umbrella despite the clear sky. Behind him stood Sir Godfrey Palmer himself. Palmer was 60, thin as a riding crop, and he wore his wealth the way some men wore cologne, excessively. Mrs. Ashwell, Bracknell said. Sir Godfrey wished to deliver the news personally. How kind, Cressida said. I've already read the notice. 6 nails, very thorough. Palmer stepped forward. The ground rent is owed. The magistrate agrees. You have 14 days. I have receipts for every payment, Cressida said. Your receipts are addressed to my late father's estate, Palmer said. His estate was dissolved 18 months ago. Payments to a dissolved estate are legally void. The debt reverts to the current freeholder, which is me. Cressida felt the floor shift beneath her. Not physically, but the legal ground had just opened. She counted the buttons on Palmer's waistcoat. 8. She did this when her mind needed a moment to outrun her anger. That's a loophole, she said, not a debt. The law doesn't distinguish, Bracknell said, smiling. The law distinguishes everything, Cressida said. That's rather the point of law, Mr. Bracknell. Perhaps you were absent that day. Palmer's expression thinned. 14 days, Mrs. Ashwell. I suggest you begin packing. They left. Cressida closed the door. She pressed her forehead against the wood. It smelled of ink and iron nails. Cressida, Dorothea said quietly. I know, Cressida said. She straightened. I need that lease extension. the one Palmer's father signed. If I can prove there was a binding agreement to extend, the lien is moot, but the original document is at the Palmer Estate Office, and Bracknell controls access. That evening, a card arrived at her workshop. Cream paper, black ink, no return address. It read, "I have a copy of the extension signed by the elder Palmer. It was among documents I purchased at the estate auction in March. If you will permit me to bring it, I will ask nothing in return. H.V." Cressida set the card on her table. She counted the words. 29. 15 years of silence, and now 29 words. She picked up her pen and wrote on the back of the card, "Bring it tomorrow at 9. If you are late, I will assume Vienna has claimed you again. C.A." He was not late. He arrived at 8:45, carrying a leather document case. The morning was gray. He wore the mended coat. She noticed. "The document," she said, holding out her hand. He opened the case and produced a folded paper. She took it to her binding table, where the light from the high windows fell cleanly. The lease extension was dated 1867. It bore the elder Palmer's signature and a witness mark. It extended the lease for 99 years. "Where did you find this?" she said. "At auction. I collect documents the way other men collect horses, compulsively and without clear purpose." He paused. "Until now. This is genuine?" "I had it authenticated by a documents examiner in Vienna. His report is in the case." Cressida read the extension twice, then the authentication report. Her hands were steady, but her pulse was not. "This invalidates the lien," she said. "It should, if presented to the right magistrate. The magistrate who signed the lien is in Palmer's pocket." "Then we need a different magistrate." She looked up. "We?" "A figure of speech," he said. "No, it wasn't." She set the document down. "Why are you doing this? You disappeared for 15 years. You let me believe I had imagined whatever passed between us. Now you appear with the exact document I need. That isn't coincidence. That's orchestration." Hadrian was quiet for a moment. She noticed that the morning light fell across him strangely. It seemed to curve around him rather than land on him. His skin was too pale. His eyes were too steady. "I left because I was afraid of what I am," he said. "A coward?" she said. "Something older than that." He picked up a scrap of leather from her work table and turned it in his fingers. "I purchased these documents because I've been watching over your interests from a distance for years. I knew Palmer would move against you eventually. I should have come sooner." "You should have come 15 years ago," she said. She took the leather scrap from his hand. "But you're here now, so let's use this document before Bracknell finds a way to destroy it." They worked. Cressida drafted a petition to the Chancery Court, citing the lease extension as grounds to void the lien. Hadrian provided the name of a barrister in Lincoln's Inn who owed him a considerable favor. They sent the petition by messenger before noon. At 2 o'clock, Bracknell arrived. He did not knock. He opened the workshop door as if he owned it. Behind him was a man Cressida had never seen. The man wore the uniform of a building inspector. "Mrs. Ashwell," Bracknell said, "Sir Godfrey has requested an inspection of these premises. There are concerns about structural integrity, fire risk, proximity of flammable materials to gas fittings." "There are no gas fittings," Cressida said. "I use oil lamps." "The inspector will determine that," Bracknell said. The inspector began walking through the workshop, making notes. He opened cupboards. He tested floorboards. He wrote rapidly. Hadrian stepped forward. "On whose authority?" Bracknell turned to him. "Lord Voss. How delightful. The authority is municipal. Sir Godfrey sits on the District Improvement Board. Inspections can be ordered at his discretion." "For premises he's trying to seize?" Cressida said. "Even you must see the conflict, Mr. Bracknell. 12 buttons on that coat. Do you bill by the button?" Bracknell's smile stiffened. "The inspection will find what it finds, Mrs. Ashwell. If the premises are condemned, the lease extension becomes irrelevant. You can't extend a lease on a condemned building. He left. The inspector continued his work. Cressida watched him measure the distance between her oil lamps and the binding presses. The measurements were accurate. His conclusions would not be. He'll condemn it, she said quietly to Hadrian. Palmer is escalating because he knows the lease extension is real, Hadrian said. He's trying to make the building worthless before the court can rule. Then we need to file before the inspection report is complete. She was already pulling on her coat. The Chancery office closes at 4. We have 2 hours. They took a hansom cab to Lincoln's Inn. The barrister, a Mr. Calloway, was waiting. He reviewed the petition, attached the authenticated lease extension, and walked them personally to the Chancery filing office. The clerk stamped the petition at 3:47. In the cab returning to Lamb's Conduit Street, Cressida sat in silence for half a mile. Then she said, "Your hands are cold." Hadrian looked at his hands. "They usually are." "No, I mean they're always cold. They were cold 15 years ago when you held my hand over the end paper. They're cold now, and you don't age." He said nothing. "I counted," she said. Her voice was steady, almost clinical. "You don't eat at social functions. You avoid afternoon light. Your skin is the same shade it was 15 years ago. Not a single line. Not a single change. I'm a bookbinder, Lord Voss. I notice preservation." The cab rattled over cobblestones. The sound filled the silence between them. "I'm older than I appear," he said. "That is the most inadequate explanation in the history of English conversation," she said. "Try again." "You would not believe me. I've spent 12 years binding volumes about things people don't believe, folklore, mythology, natural philosophy that was heresy a century ago." She turned to face him. "Tell me what you are, or stop pretending you want to help me." The cab stopped at Lamb's Conduit Street. Hadrian opened the door. The gray afternoon light fell into the cab. He did not flinch, but she watched his skin dim, the way parchment yellows under strong sun. A subtle withdrawal of something vital. "Not here," he said. "Not in daylight." "Tonight, then," she said. "My workshop, 8 o'clock. And bring the truth this time, not just documents." She stepped out of the cab. She did not look back. That evening she lit 4 oil lamps and arranged them in a wide square in the workshop's main room. She placed 2 chairs in the center. She set a pot of tea on the binding press because there was nowhere else to put it. He arrived at 8. He stepped through the door and the lamplight caught him differently than daylight. He seemed more present, more solid. The shadows loved him in a way the sun did not. "Sit," she said. He sat. She poured tea she knew he would not drink. She sat across from him and waited. "I was born in 1561, he said. She counted. 332 years, give or take. "What are you?" He told her. He spoke the word plainly. Vampire. He explained what it meant. The pale fingers, the unchanging face, the sensitivity to light, the blood. Animal, always animal. The centuries of moving from city to city, collecting books and documents and languages, accumulating knowledge the way living men accumulate wrinkles. He told her about the loneliness, not poetically, factually, the way she might describe the chemical composition of binding glue. She listened. She did not interrupt. She did not recoil. She counted the stitches in the mended coat he still wore. 17. She had been efficient that day in the rain. "Why did you leave 15 years ago?" she said. "Because when you touched my hand, I felt warm, for the first time in 270 years. And I knew that if I stayed, I would eventually have to tell you what I was. And I believed you would be afraid." "I'm not afraid," she said. "I know that now." She picked up her teacup. "This doesn't change the fact that Palmer wants my workshop and Bracknell is doing his bidding. Vampire or not, I need a legal strategy, not a confession. I can offer both. I'll take the strategy first." She set down the teacup. The confession I'll process at my own pace, thank you. Something happened to his face then. Something that might have been a smile, if smiles hadn't atrophied in him from centuries of disuse. It was crooked and uncertain and real. You're laughing at me, she said. I haven't laughed in decades. I may have forgotten the mechanics. Well, we'll work on that too. She reached across the table and straightened the collar of his mended coat. The gesture took 3 seconds. Her fingertips grazed his jaw. He closed his eyes. Neither spoke. The oil lamps hissed softly. The rain had started again outside. Then a sound broke the moment. A hammering at the workshop door. Cressida opened it to find a boy messenger, breathless, holding a sealed letter. The letter was from Bracknell. It informed her that the building inspection had been completed and the premises condemned as a fire hazard. She had 48 hours to vacate. Furthermore, the letter stated that Sir Godfrey Palmer had filed a counter-petition with the Chancery Court. The counter-petition claimed the lease extension was a forgery, that Lord Hadrian Voss, the man who had provided it, was a known eccentric with a history of purchasing fraudulent documents. He's attacking you now, Cressida said to Hadrian. Not just me, both of us. Hadrian read the letter. His expression did not change, but his hands went very still, the way old houses go still before the foundation shifts. Palmer knows I provided the document, he said. Bracknell must have followed us to Lincoln's Inn. 11 sentences in this letter, Cressida said. And every one of them is designed to make us turn on each other. He's hoping I'll blame you for bringing a document he can call a forgery. Do you? I watched you purchase it at auction. I saw the authentication. Bracknell is lying. She folded the letter. But lying effectively. If the court believes the extension is forged, I lose the workshop, and you lose your reputation. I have very little reputation to lose. Then we'd better protect mine. She was already at her desk, pulling paper. I need the original auction catalog showing the document lot. I need the Vienna examiner's credentials. And I need a witness who saw Palmer's father sign the extension. The father died in 1871, Hadrian said. Finding a living witness will be difficult. Not a living witness, Cressida said. She looked up at him. A document witness. Palmer's father was a meticulous record keeper. His estate papers were sold at the same auction where you bought the extension. If there's a corresponding entry in his personal ledger, a note about signing the extension, Bracknell's forgery claim collapses. The ledgers were sold as a single lot, Hadrian said. I know who bought them. Then go get them. He went. Cressida sat alone in her condemned workshop and counted the oil lamps. 4. 48 hours. 7 bindery workers depending on her. 1 vampire who had felt warmth because she'd mended his coat in the rain. She picked up her needle and began mending a book spine. The rhythm steadied her hands. Hadrian returned at midnight with 2 leather-bound ledgers. They found the entry on page 112 of the second volume. In the elder Palmer's own hand, extension of lease, Lamb's Conduit premises, to Ashwell Workshop. Signed this day, 14th March, 1867. Witnessed by Mr. Harold Vine, solicitor. Harold Vine, Cressida said. That name. He was Bracknell's predecessor, the same firm. They stared at each other. Bracknell inherited Vine's files, Hadrian said. He has the witness copy of the extension in his own office. He's known about it all along. He suppressed it, Cressida said. For Palmer. Because if the lease is valid for 99 years, the land is worthless to Palmer until 1966. No hotel, no profit, no reason to pay Bracknell's fees. This is suppression of evidence, Hadrian said. Bracknell could be disbarred. He could be more than disbarred. He could be prosecuted. Cressida closed the ledger. But we need the witness copy from his files. Without it, it's our word against his. I could retrieve it, Hadrian said. His voice carried a particular weight, the weight of a man who could move through darkness like water through a crack. No, Cressida said. If you steal it, Bracknell claims it was planted. We need it produced in court, from his own files, by legal order. I need Calloway to petition for discovery of the Vine records. That will take days. You have 48 hours before eviction. Then I'll need to slow the eviction. She was counting again, the threads in the ledger binding, 12 per signature. Palmer's condemnation order requires a municipal seal. The district office doesn't open until Monday. Today is Friday. That gives us the weekend to file for discovery. Hadrian looked at her with something that was not admiration. Admiration was too small a word. It was recognition. The recognition of a mind that worked like his own, but faster, and without 3 centuries of caution slowing it down. You're remarkable, he said. I'm a bookbinder with a mortgage, she said. Remarkable is what happens when you can't afford to be anything else. Saturday morning, Bracknell struck again. Cressida arrived at her workshop to find a notice posted in the Times, not the legal pages, the society pages. It announced that Sir Godfrey Palmer had generously offered to relocate the Ashwell bindery at his own expense, providing new premises and improved conditions for the workers. The notice described Cressida as an ungrateful tenant who had rejected Sir Godfrey's kindness and was now engaged in a campaign of legal harassment, aided by the reclusive and eccentric Lord Voss. Dorothea brought her the newspaper. He's turned you into the villain, she said. 9 paragraphs, Cressida said. 5 mentions of Palmer's generosity, 3 mentions of my ingratitude, 1 mention of Voss's eccentricity, the mathematics of reputation. By noon, 2 of her 7 workers had not come in. By evening, a third had sent word that he could not afford to be associated with a condemned premises. The commissions were piling up. The binding presses sat idle. Cressida stood in her empty workshop and counted the things she was losing: workers, time, public sympathy, the shape of the life she had built. A knock at the door. She expected Hadrian. She opened it to find Bracknell. I've come with a final offer, he said. Sir Godfrey will withdraw the lien, the condemnation, and the newspaper campaign. In exchange, you surrender the lease, vacate within 7 days, and sign a statement confirming that Lord Voss's lease extension is a forgery. You want me to lie, Cressida said. I want you to survive, Bracknell said. Sign the statement, and Palmer relocates your business. Refuse, and by Monday you'll have no workers, no premises, and no reputation. Lord Voss can't protect you. He can barely protect himself. 14 buttons today, Cressida said. You've dressed up for the occasion. Bracknell's smile thinned. You count things when you're nervous, Mrs. Ashwell. I've noticed. I count things when I'm deciding, she said. There's a difference, and I've decided no. You're making a mistake. I've made them before. I married a man with debts, ran a business through a recession, and once rebound a Bible with the pages in the wrong order. I survived all of it. I'll survive you, Mr. Bracknell. She closed the door. Through the wood she heard him say, Monday, Mrs. Ashwell, Monday. She pressed her palms against the door. They were shaking. She let them shake for 10 seconds. Then she went to her desk and wrote to Calloway requesting an emergency discovery motion for the Vine records. Sunday was quiet. Too quiet. Cressida spent the morning organizing her receipts and reviewing every document she had. In the afternoon, Hadrian came. He brought coffee from a shop on High Holborn and a copy of the Vine firm's historical registry. They sat at her binding table. The rain had stopped. Through the high windows, gray light fell in rectangles on the floor. I found something, Hadrian said. He opened the registry. Harold Vine died in 1879. His files were transferred to Bracknell, who was his clerk at the time. But there was an inventory of the transfer. Look. He pointed to an entry. Item 47, lease extension, Ashwell Workshop, Lamb's Conduit Street. Witness copy. Bracknell signed the inventory, Cressida said. He acknowledged receiving the document 24 years ago. If he now claims it doesn't exist, he's committed fraud. Cressida held the registry. The ink was faded but legible. Bracknell's signature was small and precise, the kind of signature that belonged to a man who had been careful his entire life except once. This is the evidence, she said. Not just that the extension exists, but that Bracknell knew it existed and suppressed it. This changes everything. Calloway can present it Monday morning. No, Cressida set the registry down. Not Calloway, me. Hadrian looked at her. Palmer has turned this into a public spectacle, she said. The newspaper article, the charitable pose. If a barrister defeats him in chambers, it's a legal footnote. If I defeat him in public, in front of witnesses, it's a story. What are you proposing? Palmer is hosting a reception Monday evening, a charity event for the District Improvement Board. Half of London's building trade will be there, and Palmer will be there, accepting praise for his generosity. She paused. I intend to attend. You were not invited. I don't need an invitation. I need the registry, the ledger, and the authenticated lease extension. And I need you to get me through the door. I can do that, he said. But Cressida, if this fails, I lose the workshop, my workers lose their positions, and Bracknell wins. That's happening anyway. At least this way, I choose the ground. He regarded her for a long moment. The lamplight played across his ageless features. 300 years, and he had never met anyone who counted her way to courage. You're certain? He said. 9 nails in this table, she said. Yes, I'm certain. Monday evening. Palmer's reception occupied the upper floor of a hotel on the Strand. Gas chandeliers, white tablecloths, the sound of crystal meeting crystal in the practiced rhythm of wealthy people congratulating themselves. Cressida wore her best dress. It was the color of ink. Her hair was pinned with a single silver comb that had belonged to her late husband's mother. She carried a leather satchel that smelled of binding glue and contained 3 documents that would end Edmund Bracknell's career. Hadrian entered first. His name was known. His fortune was envied. His eccentricity was tolerated the way the wealthy tolerate eccentricity in other wealthy people, with a glass of champagne and a quick change of subject. He offered Cressida his arm. She took it. They entered the reception room together. The conversations nearest the door paused, then resumed at a higher pitch. Palmer saw them from across the room. His expression went through several stages of surprise before settling on controlled fury. Bracknell, standing beside him, turned pale. Mrs. Ashwell, Palmer said, crossing toward them, this is a private event. For the District Improvement Board, Cressida said. My workshop is in the district. I'd say that gives me standing. You were not invited. I was condemned. I assumed that was close enough. A ripple of discomfort moved through the nearby guests. Palmer lowered his voice. Whatever you intend, this is not the place. On the contrary, Sir Godfrey, you chose the public arena when you placed that article in the Times. You described me as ungrateful. You described Lord Voss as eccentric. You offered charity to the very woman you were trying to evict. She opened her satchel. I think the public arena is exactly the right place. She produced the lease extension. She held it up. This is a lease extension signed by your father in 1867. It grants the Ashwell Workshop a 99-year lease on its current premises. Your solicitor, Mr. Bracknell, has told the court this document is a forgery. She produced the ledger. This is your father's personal ledger. In his own hand, he records signing the extension on the 14th of March, 1867. The witness was Harold Vine, solicitor, Mr. Bracknell's predecessor. She produced the registry. And this is the transfer inventory from the Vine firm to the Bracknell firm. Item 47, Lease Extension Ashwell Workshop, Witness Copy, signed by Edmund Bracknell upon receipt, 24 years ago. The room had gone silent, not the polite silence of a pause between speeches, the ringing silence of a cage when the door opens. Cressida looked at Bracknell. You received the witness copy in 1879. You suppressed it. You filed a lien claiming debts you knew were paid. You condemned my building on the authority of a client who sits on the board. And you offered me a deal in which I would sign a false statement calling this document a forgery. She counted the faces watching. 23. Enough. I decline your deal, Mr. Bracknell, and I count 16 buttons today. You've outdone yourself. Bracknell's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Palmer stepped back from him like a man stepping back from a fire. Sir Godfrey, Cressida said, your father honored his commitments. I suggest you do the same. Withdraw the lien, rescind the condemnation, and print a correction in the Times, or these documents go to the Law Society tomorrow morning. Palmer looked at Bracknell. Bracknell looked at the floor. The 23 witnesses looked at Cressida. She stood in her ink-colored dress with a leather satchel and 3 documents, and the calm of a woman who had counted her way to every decision she had ever made. Withdraw it, Palmer said to Bracknell. The words came through his teeth. Sir Godfrey, Bracknell began. Withdraw it, all of it, now. Bracknell nodded, the kind of nod that precedes the end of a career. Cressida closed her satchel. She turned to Hadrian. He was standing beside her, not in front of her, not shielding her, beside her, where he had chosen to stand. I believe, she said, we are done here. They walked out together. The Strand was wet with recent rain. The gas lamps threw gold circles on the pavement. The air smelled of river water and freedom, which turned out to smell quite similar. You were extraordinary, Hadrian said. I was terrified, she said. I counted everything in that room, the chandeliers, the chairs, the buttons, and the faces. 23, I needed witnesses. They walked in silence for a moment. The city moved around them, carriages, footsteps, the distant sound of a street musician playing something hopeful. You asked me once why I came back, Hadrian said. You said you were afraid of what you are. I was, but I'm more afraid of what I become without you. 300 years of marble skin and careful distances. And then you knelt in the rain and mended my coat without a word, and I remembered what it felt like to be warm. Cressida stopped walking. She faced him. The lamplight found his features and for once did not curve away. It settled on him like it belonged there. I'm going to say something, she said, and I want you to listen without fleeing to Vienna. I'm listening. I have spent 15 years being angry at you. I have spent 12 years building something with my own hands. I am not going to give that up, and I am not going to lose it. I am not interested in being rescued or protected or kept safe from the truth. She took his hand, his cold, ancient hand. But I am interested in you, in whatever time we have, even if your time is longer than mine. It doesn't have to be, he said, very carefully. There are ways, but only if you choose it. Only if you understand what you would give up. Tell me the cost, she said. Sunlight. Not entirely, but it dims. Food loses its urgency. Sleep becomes optional. And everyone you know will age while you don't. You will bind books for a century and watch your friends' names move from the living register to the memorial page. She counted, not buttons or nails or stitches. She counted the things she would lose, afternoon light at full strength, the pleasure of a meal eaten for hunger rather than habit, the ordinary rhythm of growing old alongside others. Then she counted what she would gain: time, his company through it, and the workshop, her workshop, secure for decades, with hands that would never weaken to do the binding. I choose it, she said, not for you, for the work, for the years, for the chance to mend more things than coats. You're certain? 17 stitches, she said. That's how many it took to mend your sleeve. I counted them again last night. Yes, Lord Voss, I am certain. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. The kiss was cool, but she felt, beneath the cold, something stirring, the faintest current of warmth, as if 300 years of winter were breaking, not with a thaw, but with a single stitch pulled tight. 3 months later, the workshop on Lamb's Conduit Street stood exactly as it always had. The sign above the door read Ashwell and Voss, bookbinders, in gold leaf that Cressida had applied herself. Dorothea had returned. All 7 workers had returned. 2 new apprentices had been hired. On the binding table sat a ledger, open to a fresh page. Cressida entered the day's commissions in her precise hand. Her penmanship had not changed. Her eyes were perhaps a shade darker. She wore long sleeves against the afternoon light that now felt bright rather than warm. These were small losses. She had counted them all. Hadrian stood at the press, setting type for a title page. He was, it turned out, an adequate typesetter and an excellent proofreader. 3 centuries of reading had their uses. "You've set the E backwards," Cressida said without looking up. He checked. She was right. "How do you do that?" he said. "I count everything," she said, "including your mistakes." He corrected the type. She recorded the last commission. The workshop smelled of ink and linseed oil and leather, and the particular warmth that comes not from temperature but from 2 people occupying the same purpose. Outside, it began to rain. Cressida set down her pen, crossed the room, and straightened his collar. Her fingers lingered at his jaw, as they had that night in the lamplight. He covered her hand with his. 17 stitches, she said. Still holding, he said. The rain fell. The oil lamps burned, and the thread held.